So I have a thing for black and gold pens. And, I have a thing for black pens. And this is a black and silver pen, of course. And it's seen better days. Has a few dings in the cap. Has a bit of pitting in the cap. But underneath that cap, well, is something that I think of as very special. And what this pen is, it's an Italian pen. It's an Aurora 88P. Now, Aurora, an Italian brand, was designed by a man named Marcello Nizzoli. And the first Aurora 88 came out in 1946, just shortly after World War II. And, during the 40s, Parker had come out with the Parker 51. And so it was slowly becoming one of the most influential pens. And this is the Italian take on the Parker 51. And in some ways, they did it better. I'm gonna toss that out there. So, mine is a 1958 88P. So this was released in 1958 or around there. And, it's a simple looking pen when you see it capped, but there's a couple little interesting things. You see there's a little silver band here, and that is just where the turning knob is. This is a piston filler, this pen. And you uncap it, and the pen suddenly becomes, in my opinion, very attractive. There's something about the semi-hooded section on this pen that it reminds me almost like a shark, and there's a lot of interesting things going on in this pen. Now, it has this part here, the section here, is ebonite, and so is the piston turning knob back here. I've heard that some of the body sections, the barrel here, was celluloid. I'm not too sure, or a high resin. There's an ink window here that you can't see because it is filled with ink at the moment. But it's actually quite an attractive ink window, and it's very handy to have that there. The pen holds a lot of ink. It's one of the interesting. It holds a lot of ink. Now, this is a piston filler. Not all 88s were piston fillers. The 88, the 88K, the 88P, and there was another variation called the 98, and the oldest 98s were piston fillers. The rest of them were cartridge fillers. But we'll get into that. So what we have is a turning knob here. I'm not going to turn it at because it's full of ink. But the interesting thing about this is quite often when you have a piston filler and a turning knob, you turn the knob and the section moves out, and you can see part of the piston. Not so with this. The interior mechanism of this, you turn it one way and the piston moves, and you turn it the other way and the piston moves up and the piston moves down, of course, but the knob doesn't move off the body. So it's very it's almost like there's a reverse gear in there somewhere, and so it doesn't move back. It just stays the way it is, and you just turn it one way and the piston comes down, you turn it the other way, the piston goes up. Really quite nice. On the section here, I don't know if we're able to see it. Let's try. I'm going to zoom in a bit. Now on the section here, I'm going to start moving in. Let's see if we can see it. There's an engraving. It says right there. You can just sort of make it out there as you turn around. And there's an oval engraved or etched into the body, and it says 88P right here. And then There's also a serial number right here engraved into the pen. Mine, I'm going to tell you what the serial number is. There's no point not telling you. It's 3030885. And also, just after the serial number, there's an F, which I'm assuming means fine. However, to me, this writes more like a medium. If you're probably using Japanese pens, you might even say this writes more like a broad. Maybe F doesn't mean fine, I don't know, but I'm assuming that's what it means. And so this has a gold nib. It's a stiff nib. I wouldn't say like these. It has no flex. Let's just say that. But it is an exceptionally smooth nib. Now, apparently, Aurora with the 88s, you could get 17 different nibs when you ordered. You could select from 17 different nibs as you ordered the pen. I'm assuming this is a standard nib. I could be wrong. Now, I had read out the serial number, and I had heard that, and I'm not too sure how the numbering system works, but I heard that from that you might be able to get the actual date of when the pen was manufactured, 3030885. I'm not too sure. Anyway. Yeah. So mostly what you have is, a black pen with silver architecture, and I'm assuming this is a chromed cap. The caps, they had an alloyed cap, they had a chrome cap, gold plated, rolled gold. I believe there was a sterling silver cap. The chromed plated caps and the alloy caps almost always have some kind of pitting. They don't age particularly well. If you look up closely on this, you can see, the wear and tear of years, but otherwise it's in good shape. This here is a clutch ring. I'm assuming that's a clutch ring. It's a push cap. When you feel it go on, it goes on quite snugly. It hasn't shrunk or anything like that. And one of the things about this pen, even though it's an old pen, it's a pull cap, I don't believe there's any liner in there. I can't really tell. I never bothered to look. I think it's just the cap. I don't think there's a plastic slip seal in there or anything like that. But I've never had a problem with this pen drying out. I use it all the time, but if I go, say, a week or two and I don't use this pen, I uncap it and it writes straight out of the bat, and it's a beautiful writer. Now, I've seen online these pens going for quite a bit. Quite often you'll see them. If they're in pristine condition, they can be very expensive. I got the steal of my life with this pen. I got this pen from a seller in Romania, and when I bought it, I assumed it was junk. But with, just giving it a little clean and looking at the ink window was pristinely clear. It didn't seem to be any residue in it at all. And so I tried it with water, and it held water, and the piston worked. And so I put ink in it, and it has never leaked, and it has written superbly. And for now, it is working perfectly. So I don't mess around with this pen. I keep one ink in it, and that's Private Reserve tanzanite. It's a color that I like. It looks really nice with this pen. And I'm not going to mess around. I'm always going to keep, with this pen, I'm not going to get into putting, cleaning it and extensively cleaning it and changing the inks. I'm going to keep one ink in it so I don't wear it out. I'm not going to push fate. I'm going to keep it working as long as I can. And, so maybe someday it might need to be restored, or maybe it needs to be retired. But for now, it's a lovely pen that works well. It caps quite nicely, and it doesn't seem to mark when it caps. It's very durable material. It's been a little while since I cleaned this up, so it's getting some fingerprints, but it has a beautiful finish. There's very few scratches. It's a very durable material. And as I said, this is ebonite right here, this section and the feed. And it has a nice warm feel to it, and it's very nice to hold. And now it says fine, but I'd say it's more of a medium personally, right? They're quick. Now, you don't get a lot of line variation with this pen. I'm skipping there a bit, but that's just the way I'm holding it. It's a wet writer, great flow, very smooth. There is a thing with Auroras where they're famous for their feedback. They're supposedly they have a very pleasant feedback. I've not really noticed feedback with this one. Mine seems to be very, very smooth, and it's quite pleasurable to write with. And yeah, it's one of those pens that it's a subtle looking pen, but I find it particularly beautiful. I especially love this section right here. It's just so, it means business. And it has a much bigger nib than, say, the Parker 51 did, the hooded nib on that. So you can see the inspiration, but then it became a completely different beast in comparison. Now, I also have, I'm going to show you quickly, I have a second Aurora that I got, and it's a student version of the same pen. And this one is called the 2 card. Now, it says right here on the logo and the identification that's engraved, it says 2 card. Now, I've seen it referred to as duo card, but I haven't really come across much information about the 2 card, and so I'm not too sure what's going on here. In many ways, it looks exactly like the 88P that I have, with some differences, of course. This is the 88P. The section seems a little, the grip section here seems a little shorter. The body is longer because this is not a piston filler. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of information. So the 88, the 88K, 88P, and the oldest 98s were piston fillers. There were several different variations over the years of this pen, and all the other ones were cartridge fillers, not cartridge converter fillers, because converters hadn't really been invented when this pen was in its heyday. So it took a cartridge, the Aurora Biflux cartridge, which is no longer made. You can find vintage cartridges if you're lucky, and maybe refill them with ink. But if you don't have a cartridge, the Aurora Biflux cartridge, and you do have the pen, you're in luck. Because even though the cartridges aren't made any longer, and it wasn't designed for a converter, so you can't find an Aurora converter for this pen, by strange coincidence, it does actually take a modern platinum converter. It fits. Um, Also, a modern cartridge from platinum apparently fits. Now, one thing to know, because this pen was never designed to be filled by a converter, it's very hard to draw ink up through the section into the converter. So you have to take the converter off and fill it and then reattach it. That's the easiest way to do it, okay? But it will flow when you fill it up and reattach it. It will flow through this section and into the nib and the feed, and it'll write. So that's handy. Now, some of the pens you might have to do some conversion on the converters. This one fit on the Duo, the 2 cart that I have here. It fit no problems, and it works as long as I take it off and fill it on its own and then reattach it. It works perfectly. Now, this pen I have, the 2 cart, does have a problem. The body is in perfect condition. The section's in good shape, perfect shape actually, and the nib is a very nice nib, just as good as the 88P. My biggest problem when I got this pen was that the clip was missing. As you see here, this one has a clip. There's pitting and dents on it. In many ways, this cap was in better shape than my 88P, but it was missing a clip, and at the where the clip was at the top of the cap, where the finial was, there was a hole. And because there was a hole, the pen would dry out fairly rapidly. I've sort of been looking around. Every now and then I keep an eye out for, just checking on eBay, checking for a cap that's intact. But what I've started doing was tinkering with this pen, thinking, well, my biggest problem is the big hole up here, allowing air into it, and there's a hole here. That's a breather hole, that's fine. But this hole up here was allowing the nib to dry out. So what I've been doing, and I decided to do, was take some Sculpey. My son is into making miniatures. So I took some Sculpey and I shaped it into a form, and I sanded it around, and I'm going to paint that black. And hopefully that allows the pen cap to be sealed and not allow air in. And also, that can easily be removed if I ever come across a clip that will fit this pen, or if I ever find a cap that will fit from Aurora, I will hopefully be able to put it on and have a perfectly writing pen. A couple interesting things about this pen is the design influence, of course, is the Parker 51, but also in some strange way, the Parker 45, the shape of the end of the barrel and the way it tapers. This is more of a classic cigar shape. This is more, inspired by the 51. This takes inspiration from the 51, and I would say the 45. I'm not too sure what year this pen was made. And this would be a student grade pen. This one here. So I'm not too sure if it's just a gold-plated nib, but it's a nice nib, Student pens don't necessarily mean bad pens. Actually, quite often student pens are very well made because you don't want a student using a pen that they're not going to enjoy using. So there you have it. The Aurora 88P, one of my favorite pens in my collection. If you ever get a chance to find a vintage Aurora, and it's in good shape and working, they might be pricey, but if you can afford it, take the jump. It's a beautiful pen. As I say, there's lots of variations, lots of cap finishes. There's very few color variations in the body. I think there was a red version, things like that, but mostly they come in black. You'll see different caps and stuff like that. Different nibs, of course. And a beautiful pen. And if you find yourself with, say, an 88 and it takes a converter, and you don't have a cartridge for it, if it's the cartridge filler, try the platinum converters. They most likely will work for you. So anyway, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you're new around here, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. It's always fun to make videos about things that I'm interested in and things that I love. I'm an I do ink and I do pens and I do paper and I do art and other things too that cross my mind. So anyway, I hope you have a great day and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.